Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing Professor Oak's laboratory from Pokemon, the animated version. So how this build basically came about is that recently we got Strangerville in The Sims 4, and a lot of the items from Strangerville are very secret lab orientated, science career, and I've been very inspired to do laboratories. I've been having a lot of fun with it, and I recently built Jimmy Neutron's secret laboratory and his entire house. If you'd like to see that video, I will link it at the end, and I have a whole bunch of other Strangerville builds out currently, and plenty more to come in the future. And what I wanted to do first and foremost was I had the idea to create the laboratory that they create Mewtwo in from the original Pokemon movie. And I wasn't quite sure what that looked like, so I did a couple of Google searches to come up with the building and see if I could get some good layouts and figure out like good points of reference for that. And the building itself is extremely organic looking, and it just looked like something from outer space, very crazy, very abstract. And I realized that it probably wasn't going to be the most feasible thing to attempt in The Sims 4, just due to basic game restrictions and things like that. So I thought on it a little bit more. I did still want to do something Pokemon related, and I had the idea to attempt Professor Oak's laboratory. Come to find out, the version from the multiple TV shows that have been on at this point, X and Y, and all of the other ones from the different regions, show Professor Oak's laboratory, and it has a very specific look that is very different from the games. Now, I have made his laboratory in Pallet Town from different versions of the games, and those videos are kind of old now, but that version looks nothing like the one from the animated series. So in the animated series, he lives in this big, almost barn-like house on the top of a very, very large hill with a beautiful windmill at the back. And it's clearly gated off. It's got a section in the back where lots of Pokemon can hang out, have fun, play around. It's clear to me that there's like barns back there and all sorts of like good places and terrain for them to run around. So I decided this would be a really cool opportunity to use some stuff from Strangerville, do a good old classic Pokemon build, and also play with terrain a little bit, which is something I have kind of strayed away from since we got the tools. I don't really love the way that the tools work in The Sims 4, and I know I'm not alone in that, and it causes some problems that you are going to see in this video, and probably like the biggest problems regarding like why I don't use them. So, but I did want to do this. I wanted to try, do a little house on the hill kind of a thing, and this seemed really fun, so I was really excited to do this build, and I do love the way that it came out. So, first I had to do the terrain manipulation itself, and like I said, he lives on this very, very large hill with this beautiful, like, winding stairs going up to the top of the hill. The game doesn't allow me to actually put stairs into the terrain properly the way that I would have liked for this build. So instead of that, I did do just a pathway up to the house, and then it has this beautiful, like, big, round, domed roof and a windmill in the back. So the windmill initially was going to be a little bit of a struggle, and when we got Strangerville, we actually got a windmill, but it is a world object that has yet to be unlocked. So to keep the majority of this build CC free, I wanted to make my own windmill, and how I actually did that is by taking very small rooms and building a tall column, and then the windmill portion itself is just roof pieces, and that really, really worked out. It looks a lot like the photos. So I am happy with that. I did want to gate off and make this entire lot feel very secluded. So we are on a 64 by 64, and I'm going to tell you right now, I feel like I didn't have enough room for the entirety of this build. When I was seeing photos of the back end of Professor Oak's laboratory, it was just miles and miles of open space for Pokemon to run around, and there was areas and sections that had like rivers going through it, and there were barns and stuff like that. So this was not enough space to do all of that. but it was enough to get a general idea and get a lot of the major points. So to kind of keep that entire feel that the land itself is a little more secluded and you would have to go through the front gate in order to get to the back end, and almost to hide away this Pokemon getaway in the backyard, I wanted to completely cover the front of the hill with plants and trees and terrain, and I did cut a lot of that just for time's sake, because watching me place individual pieces of grass is not the most entertaining thing, I don't feel like, but there was a lot of terrain, there was a lot of landscaping that went into this build in order to accomplish all of this. And the problem with terrain currently in The Sims 4 is a weird camera glitch that, because I have manipulated the terrain so high in this build, the camera constantly wants to almost shoot to the top, way up in the air, and it causes a lot of problems when I go inside to decorate the interior and do the whole house and laboratory and stuff. So there might be a little bit of jumping up and down in elevation, and I'm very sorry, I don't have a way to fix it. It's like a game glitch. So unfortunately, that's something that you're just going to have to deal with if you want to watch this video, and it's something that The Sims 4 really, really needs to fix, and one of the reasons why I do not use terrain manipulation currently, because it's a little nauseating even as a builder to deal with. So just keep that in mind throughout the duration of this video. And for the backyard itself, I had this idea, instead of, you know, this big expansive, all this like space that these Pokemon would have, maybe for the purposes of this build, what I would do instead is break the limited space that we do have off into sections, almost as if they are biomes individually for each type of Pokemon. So I did create this beautiful rock section for rock and fighting type Pokemon. I wanted to include a water station and a pond, if you will. So that is just a big pool with one end being a little bit more plant-like and having lots of plants and stuff like that inside of it. And then for fire, I decided to go with sand and just keep with like the dry, sunny theme of it all. I also created an area out of flowers for bug Pokemon, and under the trees, there are two more sections. One of them is going to be dark rocks, and we actually have black rocks in The Sims 4 that I never use. And I'm using some different plants from vampires in order for me to do like dead trees, dead plants, and just create this like ghostly wasteland. And then also just a general area for grass type Pokemon with lots of high, tall grass to hide in. And I did want to have a pathway going all the way down from the back end of the house through the backyard. It is probably an area where Professor Oak keeps his own personal Pokemon. Maybe he just has lots and lots there to obviously study, which is one of his jobs. I imagine that quite a few trainers probably leave their Pokemon here from time to time. It's almost like a little vacation house or a getaway. So I wanted it to be spacious. I wanted it to have all Pokemon types in mind. And this entire house is actually going to be CC free. The entire house, the laboratory, the backyard, it's all custom content free. So if you'd like to download this, it is available for download on the gallery under my Origin ID, theallegedsimmer. Now, at the end of the video, I'm going to go in with a set of Pokemon statues that somebody made way back in the day and are actually no longer available, and I'm really sorry to say that, but the person who created them has completely deleted all of the posts that contain the links for them. I happen to still have them from previous builds that I've done way back at the beginning of my channel, and they're basically just like tons and tons of Pokemon statues from all sorts of the different games. So at the last portion of the video, we're going to go into the backyard and decorate the biomes with the different Pokemon that would correspond with each of the land areas. So the version on the gallery is custom content free. I will also upload the custom content version for those of you who may happen to already have the Pokemon statues. But again, I'm really, really sorry. I cannot link you to the download link because it is completely gone. But it is a Pokemon build. And I don't build with custom content anymore, but I really did want to use some of them in this build, and it helps to bring the back area to life completely. And in my personal game, I know that I'm going to leave it with the CC on and the Pokemon statues and everything. So yeah, that's going to be the last portion of the video. Currently, we are on to the interior of the build. So what you guys didn't see off camera is that I did create a loft area. I am going off of very specific photos of reference. And it was clear to me that you could see the dome shape of the roof. So I had to remove a few foundation pieces in order to create that look. But in the screenshots, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about a little bit more. And Professor Oak's lab is very simple. There was not a ton inside of it. It looked to be very expansive, and there was only a couple of areas that I knew I had to try to get as accurate as possible. So when you first walk into the left, there is an area where Professor Oak is clearly working and works very commonly there, I would assume. So that was like his main computer, all of his working supplies, his main station. The back left-hand corner under the stairs had things like bookcases. It had this cool trim on the floor that looked to be almost like shelving, and it had another desk and some general working supplies and a couch, almost as if he he's here very often. He works, he sits on the couch, he has other areas and places inside here to work from so that he doesn't get uncomfortable. And then there was just general clutter items that you would see in a laboratory. So we are using a combination of stuff from Strangerville. Like I said, we did get quite a few new items in that laboratory and science-y category, and we also got quite a few when we got Get to Work. So I'm using a good mix between the two. I also wanted to use anything that I could see in the photo. I tried to replicate, obviously, exactly like it was being shown. But when I was done with this entire build, it just felt so empty in here and not enough for a busy laboratory with so much going on. So I decided to add quite a few of my own elements in here, like boxes, extra library books, and extra bookcases, extra supplies that you would routinely see in a laboratory, or anything basically from the science career from Get to Work. I don't know what a lot of those supplies do, but it looked right and it looked like it would fit really well in here. And just big, expansive shelves with clutter items and things like that. The science station from the kids, and lots of bulky pipe industrial sort of items. And a lot of things from Debug as well. Random stuff all over the place. And maybe you could even do the science career in here if you're looking for a new laboratory and you are still doing the careers from Get to Work from way back and you want a new place to take your sim to work. This could be a really cool alternative, especially if you're going for something a little bit themed and based after something. It's just a little bit fun, a little different. And then, like I said, it just felt so empty in here. So right in the middle, I decided to do and pay homage to the original games, where you would literally, the lab looks so small in the games, and you just walk in, you walk right up to where you're picking your Pokemon. Professor Oak is standing on the other side. And I wanted to have some kind of a station that represented that. Again, I didn't want to use custom content for the interior of this build so that most people could download it. So we're just doing a light representation of it using some toys from Cats and Dogs and some more of the science career dome things. I do not even know what they're called. But I wanted to have something covering the Pokeballs so that you couldn't just reach in and grab one. You actually have to push a button in order to release it. Kind of a system. And so we create this really cool island right in the middle where you can do so. And that helps to fill up some of the space in general. And I imagine that Professor Oak keeps that type of stuff, because if you think about it from when you are playing the games and you go in and you pick your Pokemon, he must have more because other trainers, I'm sure, go in and pick their Pokemon. So I'm sure he's constantly replacing whatever is there and has stuff readily available for new trainers that come in, even though Pallet Town is so very small and not too many trainers are probably starting out of Pallet Town. But I don't know, that gets into the whole lore and all of the weird mythology behind Pokemon that some cannot be explained and isn't really worth getting in depth about. So there we go, paying homage to the games, kind of a cool collaboration between the two. And then we did have so much extra space in this gigantic barn type of laboratory, and I figured this has to be Professor Oak's home as well. So I wanted to do a really bright, colorful, light wood, sunshiny Pokemon type of house and do an entire living space for Professor Oak. So full kitchen, bathroom, one single bedroom. He does appear to live alone, so it's very much just themed after that idea that he probably lives here by himself and needs a space to go to sleep at night in a kitchen and things like that. So I wanted to bring in the natural light. This is a very like beautiful land or spot in the game. There's lots of light here. It felt so beautiful, and like just the sun coming through all of the windows, and a lot of the windows that are used in this build are rather large. So I didn't want to take away from all of the sunshine by doing darker colors or anything like that. And when I have done builds based after the old games, routinely they will use bright colors inside the houses, reds, pinks and purples and blue and green. So I wanted to play with that entire idea. Each one of the rooms was actually, I guess I gave a different color theme to. The living room and the kitchen both get a blue, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm using those, the fridge and the stove from Jungle Adventure. I love them so much. I feel like I always want to use them and have to stop myself constantly from doing so. But whenever I can get an excuse to use like a really colorful appliance, I definitely will. And they look really, really nice in here. Unfortunately, I think the one thing that does really bother me, I love these countertops and I love the way they look. Especially with this floor, they match really well. But we do not have a matching cabinet for these counters, and I believe these counters are actually meant to be more of like an outdoor counter, but I don't understand why necessarily, because they're so bright and beautiful and light wood and sort of industrial looking at the same time, which again is a general theme in this build, so it fits really well. And I feel like a plain light toned wood cabinet to match it would just go perfectly and create these beautiful bright kitchens, but we don't exactly have anything that matches it. In fact, I couldn't find in the game, from what I have, a version of any cabinets that were light wood. The only ones that I have are the ones from Cool Kitchen Stuff that come in a light wood, but of course, it doesn't actually match any of the other light woods from the game, especially not those counters from base game. So that's a little bit aggravating and unfortunate, because I do love to use those counters so much, but it's so annoying that I can't find a cabinet to match it. So I decided to go with the ones from Cool Kitchen Stuff. It's close enough, and I brought in some wood tones from some of the other packs to hopefully melt all of it together really well, but you know, it is what it is. And then there was an area where I wanted to create a beautiful place to sit and have some breakfast or dinner, kind of a makeshift dining room. And we have a door there that actually leads to the backyard, and I believe is the only door to get to the backyard. So, and that was only because, again, for the laboratory portion, I was going off of photo reference, so there was clearly no door on the back part. There was actually a door up top on the loft area, but the door would have led to nowhere, if that makes sense. And that's one of the things that I'm always trying to explain whenever I do these builds that are based after something. A lot of times when artists draw interiors to places, they're not thinking about the exterior when they're doing it. They're just thinking about maybe the particular scene or the vibe that they're going for, and they'll draw things that make sense for that scene, but they won't do it for the overall maybe layout of the house. So there was a door in the loft area that, according to the outside images I have of this place, wouldn't have led anywhere. So rather than do that, I decided to put the door in his actual home portion. And I almost feel like the back area, the backyard, is a Pokemon getaway. It's like an oasis for them, a vacation land. And he probably doesn't let people back there too often, just to let the Pokemon be in their natural habitat, be kind of by themselves, and have a good time. So having them have to go through the house and then through that back door to get to the backyard would create a situation where he would be able to determine who gets to go back there. So I like that idea. in general. And for this entire house, I did want to keep it a little bit more simple, just based off of doing builds from the video games. There is not a lot of furniture routinely shown in these houses, so I kept it very clean, a little bit less clutter than I would normally do, especially currently. Some of the furniture that I chose is definitely a little older or a little bit 90s, and that was most definitely done on purpose. And, yeah, just kind of simple overall, but I did like the idea that Professor Oak probably has quite a few Pokemon staying in his house as well. So I put some food bowls down, some dog toys, some cat toys, with the idea that they would be interested in those types of things, and that obviously he's probably making them food and cooking it out of his kitchen. And they do show in the anime, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe a couple of times they show Pokemon eating almost out of like dog food bowls. So that was that idea. And then for his bedroom, I know that this is a really interesting color scheme, and some people are definitely going to hate the patterned bed with the patterned carpet, but I kind of love it. I love the greens and the blue and the navy, and I never do that kind of a scheme, especially in a bedroom, and it felt so earthy and just so almost regal at the same time, like something that somebody very smart would pick, I guess you could say. People pick different colors, obviously based off of their personalities, and I feel like this paint scheme and this green and the blue is so Professor Oak to me, and I don't know how to really put it into words, but it feels 90s, it feels a little retro, it feels like something he would pick. And I like the clashing patterns. I think that it works this time around, and it's not something that I would normally put together, not at all, but I feel like it works. And then for his room in general, I wanted to keep it rather simple. I did do a few workstations in the house where he would have computers available, and I liked using the smaller computer desk because if you remember from the old games, they have a very, very similar setup when you go inside of the Pokemon Center for trainers to use in order for them to train Pokemon back and forth. And what you're actually doing is obviously trading with Professor Oak. I believe he keeps a lot of your stuff for you, or there's like a system in place, and at least in the anime, that's how it's shown for Ash, that Professor Oak is keeping hold of some of his Pokemon for him. So I like the idea that there's multiple computers in the house and in different rooms, because he would need quick access to that, especially if somebody was like requesting a Pokemon or somebody called and needed something from him. He would need the computer right there. Because computers almost act as TVs and phones in the show, if you remember. That's how it's always shown, like Ash is projected across the screen as trying to talk to him that way. So I wanted to do a couple of those throughout the house. We did also do a bathroom, and I decorated that front hallway in the entranceway of the home when you first walk in from the laboratory, but I just cut it to save a little bit of time, and it was very, very minimal design-wise. Nothing too interesting, but what is interesting and a little bit more fun is this backyard. So obviously I wanted to keep all of the Pokemon according to their specific biomes, and I love taking water Pokemon and putting them floating in the pool almost as if they are swimming. And I did repeat Pokemon because obviously there are certain ones that are very common and you would probably imagine are going to be a little bit more frequent in the wild, and also of course frequent here. So there's quite a few that are repeated, such as Magikarp and a lot of water Pokemon and maybe Caterpie and things like that. But anything that was rare or a little bit hard to obtain, I only did one of. So there's only one Gyarados, one Lapras. I believe I only did one Charizard, things like that. And yeah, one thing that was a little bit annoying, obviously, and another reason, again, that I'm not a big fan of using the terrain manipulation in this game, it causes objects to float pretty uncontrollably, and it's really difficult to get them to go back down to the ground, if not impossible in certain areas. So there are going to be quite a few Pokemon that are not sitting flush to the ground in this backyard, and that's really unfortunate and doesn't look the best. But there's nothing I can really do about that, unfortunately. So I did use a lot of flying Pokemon or Pokemon that were floating, because then it doesn't really matter if they are off of the ground a little bit. But there were so many that I wanted to use. And I did stick majorly with Gen 1 this time around, just because when I think of Pokemon, I do think of Gen 1, and especially with Professor Oak, I think of Gen 1. So most of them are Gen 1, but some of the statues I had were from different generations. So I did use some of them here and there. I was almost afraid to use them from different generations because I'm not really sure about all of their names and their typing. I really got lost and kind of fell out of it after Gen 3. So I didn't want to pick a Pokemon from like Gen 5 and put it in a section or a biome that didn't make sense for their typing. So I tried to stay away from them unless it was very clear what kind they were. And even at the end, I went in with a couple of random ones and just put them all over the place because it doesn't really matter. There's nothing saying that they can't go to different biomes and switch to different areas, just that they would probably prefer to stay in something that's comfortable for them. So yeah, just decorating the areas with their corresponding Pokemon, and that is pretty much going to be the end of the video, you guys. Stay tuned for the screenshots, especially for this backyard portion. It's really, really pretty, I promise you. Let me know what else you would like to see in the future, and more Pokemon builds, possibly. Would you like to see, like, other professors' laboratories? That might be a fun little series to do. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that little bell icon below to turn on post notifications so you can get updated every single time I post, and I will talk to you all in the next one.